Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Imperial Holonet. I am DID123. Today I'm joined by Red Leader and Killy Doc Holocron, and with special guests Matt and Carly. And today we are all here to discuss the beginning of Star Wars Episode 9 speculation with the topic of the First Order and Kylo Ren. Yes, what do we want to see from our villainous villains of the sequel trilogy? What do we want to see happen to the First Order and Kylo? I guess we'll just go round robin of what we think is going to happen and what we want to see happen, which, expectations versus dreams, for lack of a better term. So I'll start us off and then I'll kind of take us round robin. So, what I expect to see happen is, I expect them kind of return the Jedi based kind of elements of, the Resistance has gathered their forces. The First Order, the First Order can go one of two ways for me, of either being in power or they have power just because they're so massive, but Kylo Ren's leadership is like holding them back from actually getting that final victory.
Mm-hmm.
As for Kylo himself, I can see him going one of two ways. I can see him either going full on dark. This is where he finally comes to his own as Supreme Leader Ren, or what I kind of want to see happen mostly is, Doc, you got some noise in the background.
Sorry, my neighbors are loud.
Sorry, you can put it on mute. What I can see happen is Kylo going to almost like, if you've seen Avatar: The Last Airbender, my whole thing's like him having like an Azula like mental breakdown almost, like he's seeing ghosts and stuff. Which could happen considering we do have Force Ghost. So yeah, those are kind of my just general thoughts of that right now. Carly, how about you go second? What do you think will happen, just general, and then we'll bounce off to Red, Matt, and Doc.
In general, I think that the First Order is going to be in power. I think that's probably where they're going to go now, since the Resistance kind of got decimated at the end of Last Jedi. I think it's probably, like, I don't know, what I'm expecting to see is Kylo being a leader of the First Order, but not really being a great one, and kind of just being, I don't know, Hamlet-like, kind of like you said, kind of like Azula, just kind of going crazy and like retreating into himself a lot. With a lot more Hux, especially when talking about what I want to see from it. Hux is my favorite character, so I'm really hoping to see Hux kind of like come into his own and try to take the First Order away from Kylo, because he does not seem to be all thrilled about Supreme Leader Ren.
No, he does not. Was that it? Was that the general thoughts?
Yes, that's
okay.
it for that.
Matt, you go next.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of want to piggyback off that a little bit, because I feel like a very obvious place to go when you look at the kind of last shot we see of General Hux in Last Jedi, where he's looking at Kylo like he's a complete idiot and is just wanting to, especially if you get into the Last Jedi novelization, when you really get into Hux's head and you see how much he wants to make that power play. So I definitely could see the idea of Kylo retreating into himself, being a weird combination of Azula, and I know that this comparison is tired and I'm going to keep beating it to death, but kind of being a mixture of Azula and Zuko. I'm kind of reminded of Zuko after he, goes back to the Fire Nation in the cave, but then realizes that he's not actually happy, that this is not doing anything for him. So this kind of combination of these two things, where he is now in power, but is realizing that in doing so, he's just kind of lost pretty much the last shred of whatever was holding on to his humanity. So him retreating into himself, I think, is going to cause the First Order to lose some sort of major conflict that they needed to win or something like that. And that's going to provide Hux this final push to move forward with some kind of coup. And how the Knights of Ren play into that is going to be really interesting, assuming we even really touch on them, because I know they've been very downplayed, to say the least.
Yeah, definitely. And also, yay, Last Jedi novelization fan, also, hooray. I'm not alone. Okay, Red, you go now. General thoughts, what you want to see, what you think will happen, etc.
Yeah, I think what's going to be the case is probably the First Order will be more or less in power, but not necessarily in control, if that makes any sense. Like, almost what Palpatine was like in Dark Empire, where they have the means to control everything, but there's not necessarily a civil war within them, but definitely some internal strife between Hux and Ben, or Kylo in this case. And probably, maybe this is wishful thinking, but if they do have the Knights of Ren present, I think they're going to be kind of a representation of what's going on within the First Order, where you're probably going to have some of them be more on Hux's side, some be on Kylo's side, maybe one or two want to turn back to the light, something like that, and kind of that's what's holding the First Order back.
The fact you bring up Dark Empire makes me happy. I love that comic to death. All three. I used to have all three. I love it. Oh, did you have more to say, Red?
No, that's about it.
Okay, Doc. What about you? Just your general thoughts, and then we'll get into various topics.
I think that while the First Order will definitely be, you can hear me, right?
Yep.
Okay. I think while the First Order will definitely be the main threat of Episode 9, obviously, in a lot of ways, I think the First Order was always destined to fall apart, because when you just look at the infrastructure of it, it's very objectively haphazardly put together. There are a lot of things that just don't work with one another, and a lot of that is obviously intentional, because Kylo in his whole thing in Episode 7 was he was trying to be like Vader, but he simply wasn't Vader. In that same regard, the First Order is trying to be the Empire, but they have nowhere near the same levels of organization as the Empire did, or the same support that it would have had back during the Galactic Civil War. So I think the First Order, while it will definitely be a threat, I think it is destined to fall apart at the end of the day. And I think a lot of it will have to do with the infighting between Kylo, Hux, and possibly the Knights of Ren as well. We still don't know the extent of how big of a role the Knights of Ren will play in Episode 9. I hope it's a big one. But there's definitely going to be some power fighting and infighting going on with the First Order, I think. And in terms of Kylo, personally, I don't think Kylo will be totally redeemed if they do try to go that route. An idea I actually had while I was thinking about this was Kylo could end up realizing he's wrong and end up sacrificing himself in some way, but then he would not. But unlike Vader, he wouldn't go to the light, and his entire spirit would just disappear, and he would accept his punishment. And that seems kind of depressing. I think that would be a really poignant end to his character, because he would, in a meta way, he would realize I'm irredeemable. I can never go back to what I was before, so I'm just going to let myself die and accept my punishment. And that would be really bleak and really grim, but I think it would be kind of poignant in a way. And it would also be a good way to finally say this is the end of the Skywalker saga, and we're finally, getting away from that stuff, and let's see what's coming next. So those are just my basic thoughts.
And I'll actually link that as somewhat our first topic, and I'll try to. It's not necessarily the topic of what I call Ben-demption, but overall, I read the Twitter. I know what people say. But the finality of our villains, especially because this is the third movie. You gotta wrap stuff up, obviously. But unlike with Return of the Jedi, which was the idea for that movie was I'm gonna just end it all now. This movie kind of knows it's gonna get a sequel eventually. Obviously, I don't expect Episode 10 next year, or maybe it's secretly the Rian Johnson stuff. I doubt that. Episode 10, 11, 12 is kind of eventually probably gonna happen, I think. So I'm curious, and anyone can jump in now. How much finality do you want to see for our villains? Do you want the First Order just crushed and Puck's in the bunker, Der Untertag style, just shouting at his generals? Or do you think there'll be some First Order still around? Maybe Kylo will be in jail, Loki style. Who wants to jump in on that?
I will.
Okay.
Basically, I don't know. I don't think the First Order should be crushed, and my reasoning behind that is just that, that's what happened in the original trilogy, and then they created a government that didn't work. And then the First Order rose because that government did not work. Like, the New Republic was actually a bad government. And so if the First Order just gets crushed and like the new Republic rises, then I don't think that satisfies anything that happened in this story. So in a more ideal world, I would see like the Resistance and the First Order kind of like maybe people like Kylo Ren and Rey and Finn and people like them come together and realize they have to meet in the middle somewhere. And then extremists like Poe and Hux kind of be a conflict in the film because they both very much extremely believe in their own thing.
Fun fact, it actually happened somewhat in Legends with the Pelion. I forget what it's called. Ray, what's that treaty called? That old Imperial remnant.
I didn't read that stuff. That one.
Yeah. But yeah, go on. Sorry.
Yeah, so that's just kind of what I'm like. In order for everything to be satisfied fully, I think that we need to have not just the good guys win at the end of the day, because we've already seen like in the novelizations what created the First Order and what got them like all this support was the fact that the New Republic actually was a pretty bad government. So just bringing about the New Republic will not solve anything except like the personal stories in this. But as far as at a galactic level, it won't do anything.
That's one of those problems when you have the expanded lore that, like, if you read the Phasma novel, which is absolutely fantastic, and you get kind of the point of view of Cardinal, who just says, you know, look at all these planets that couldn't afford representation. You know, look at Phasma's homeworld, look at Parnassus. Like, nobody even knew what was going on Parnassus, and people were just suffering and suffering and suffering. And so, like, these are just kind of these, the First Order is this legitimate extremist, you know, genocidal, you know, murderous machine that comes from a place of what they perceive to be legitimate problems. It's like the textbook example of you can point out all these problems, but you're not providing any actual reasonable solution. So in an ideal world, I would actually really love to see those types of problems addressed. But at the same time, you know, we've already, even in The Last Jedi, they've already sort of made the First Order slightly the First Order slightly less interesting than the way they portray it, at least to me, I feel like, in the expanded lore that we have right now. So I don't know how much discussion or how much talk there is going to be of some sort of piece, but I would be interested to see a way that we can break this cycle of an empire rises, a rebellion comes against it, and then when the rebellion is in power, then some group of people come in who don't like the way the Republic is being run. I think if we can find some way to break that cycle in a narrative way and then come to a place where you have both sides coming against a common enemy, in the sense of, like, we could even do something like the Yuzan Vong in the future. I mean, I would like to see a satisfactory end to this, like, cycle, so that way we could then maybe focus on a more external threat as we move forward in the timeline.
I mean, my pipe dream is to have the spirit of Palpatine come back and Rey and Kylo gotta fight him, but that's my pipe dream. That's never gonna happen. I can't help myself. But no, I agree with you to a point of, like, you know, if it's just First Order dead, New Republic comes back.
Exactly.
Now the Second Order returns.
Can I make a suggestion, actually?
Sure, Duck. Go ahead.
So we've established throughout both the original trilogy and this trilogy and the prequel trilogy that maybe republics in general and Star Wars just don't work that well overall. Even in Legends, the, like, 1,000-year republic, I think it was, like, even that had some pretty big flaws, except when, like, Lotus was running and stuff. But to tie it back to the prequel trilogy for a second, do you think it's possible that instead of a new republic in Episode 9, instead we'll get a new CIS, like a collection of independent systems?
Well, wasn't the CIS... Wait. No, you go ahead. I need to check on something with that.
I'm just saying, do you think instead of a republic, we could get a new government similar to that structure, except good?
Like, it's possible, but the First Order has risen from issues in places like Jakku, which is the planet we know most about. And Jakku's issue is that, like, it doesn't have any representation in the Republic, obviously, because you can't afford it. But
Because no one wants to go back to it.
Yeah, it also is not really in a position to be its own government per se, because you would just have like rich, corrupt people, kind of like Jabba on Tatooine, in charge. So you would have to have some sort of like regulatory power, like every region would have to have a governor or something like that, which they could maybe work out. It would just have to be a little, I don't know, it's gonna have to be complicated.
Well, I've always heard people say they want, like, if the New Republic is Rome in Europe, and if the Star Wars galaxy, oh, sorry, Mom, if the Star Wars galaxy is Europe and the New Republic is Rome, do that analogy for a second, and that maybe we'll get to a place where it's not just one governmental entity that rules everything, maybe like multiple, like you got France and Germany and Italy, like 5 powers, 10 powers in the galaxy, smaller and with their own little borders and areas. There isn't like this one giant faction or these 2 factions. I know some people who want that. Red, do you have anything to add to this? You're the
Yeah, so I checked up on it. So yeah, the Confederacy was a well, at the very least had a Congress and Parliament, so it probably would be more or less the same as the Republic. After all, that was its intent, to essentially just be the New Republic before the New Republic. Though, I guess we need more info, or at least in my opinion, on what the Republic actually was doing, because it seems like at first, at least for the first like 20 years, it was doing pretty well. Like, the reason why it didn't gather a lot of systems was because, unlike the old Republic that wasn't the the prequel Republic, they almost seemed intent on having every single system they could as a part of them. You know, everyone had to be in the Senate, every system they could possibly grab, while they made an intentional effort, when Mon Mothma at least was in charge, to not get every single system as a part of it. So they would trade with them and, you know, have connections to other systems, possibly loan out the New Republic Defense Force, but they would let people kind of independently lead, as opposed to, you know, trying to grab everything, because that's kind of what caused the Confederacy to an extent, was having all these systems that were given a seat but no actual voice. And so I guess, yeah, the idea of having smaller states or dividing it a little bit more based on governors, almost like perhaps giving each area, like giving the core, the mid-rim and outer rim and whatnot, their own Congress might actually be a better idea.
Also, sorry.
They read the prequel Republic is the Galactic Republic. The pre-prequel Republic is the Old Republic.
That works.
That's right. Doc, go ahead.
I was just going to say, the Darth Plagueis novel isn't canon anymore, technically, but one of the things that they brought up specifically in that novel when it came to the Republic-Confederacy war was the inherent bias between humans and non-humans, and how the majority of the Confederacy was made up of non-humans while the Republic was run by a human. I mean, Dooku technically ran a Confederacy, but still. But I don't know if that could be remedied by a government unlike the Republic or the Confederacy, maybe something in between that. But I think it would be cool if we addressed like maybe some of those inherent biases between certain species in Star Wars in a way. I understand that's kind of risky territory given the current political climate and everything. But you never know, I guess.
Yeah,
Chuck
Wendig will do it. He'll do it in a novel. He's not afraid of that kind of nonsense, which I love.
Yep. But to move it back just a little bit to the original topic of Ben Solo in the First Order, in terms of the Ben-demption, as I guess we'll get onto that a bit now, that's always been something for me where I'm like so torn on it for so many reasons. Like, on the one hand, I don't want them necessarily just repeating Return of the Jedi, because, you know, who don't want to repeat every time? That was Force Awakens.
I think that pretty much went out the window with Snoke getting killed.
That too,
Yeah.
but yeah, unless General Hux starts throwing Sith lightning at Rey and he tosses him over the balcony, but I don't think I want that. But I don't know how I would feel if it were just like Rey's like, Kylo Ren, I have come to slay thee, and he slays her, and she slays him. My bad. Although because like I don't know if that would be fitting either, unless they like really hammer him home as like he's now the big bad of the universe. But I don't know. I just like feel like there's a middle ground somewhere. I'm not creative enough to figure out what it is.
If they do go the route of Rey just killing Kylo in the end, I don't want it to be like just a simple like she wins and that's it. I do want it to be a little more nuanced than that. Like I do want Kylo to finally reach the end of his arc in Episode 9, because throughout the movies we've been building up that he is becoming more and more of a big villain and Rey is becoming more and more like a Jedi. So I think we'll definitely see that come to a head. But I also don't want it to just be Rey kills Kylo and that's it. I want something a little more in depth than that.
Right. Anyone want to add in, jump in?
Sure. Yeah, I'm all on Team Bendemption. I think it's absolutely going to happen. I really think that, like, he's going to kind of, like, I don't know. I think Kylo Ren / Ben Solo is a really interesting character, and that I don't think he's with the First Order just because he's evil. I think he probably actually does believe in a lot of the stuff the First Order stands for politically, and the Resistance kind of has an issue with seeing that, and so I think he's going to kind of come around on realizing that there has to be a negotiation sort of ground, like between the Resistance and the First Order, and we'll kind of also realize that there needs to be a balance between the light and the dark. Because I feel like that's what
are taking his jobs. That's First Order propaganda for you.
Yeah. Like, I don't know, because I feel like with Rey, the interesting thing is that we've seen her access the dark side several times, and she portrays it as nothing's really wrong inherently with the dark side. She can use it to like discover things about herself or to win in a fight or something like that. But she still clings to the light at the end of the day. And so I think what Kylo needs to learn is that he can have like this darkness inside of him, and that doesn't make him inherently evil. So I think that there's definitely a chance that he's gonna come around and kind of embrace the light again and realize he doesn't have to be an extreme one way or the other.
I definitely think that if Kylo were to turn to the light, I think a lot of it would do with something like with Hux, like trying to coup and him trying to just like having everyone just turn on him, all his generals and admirals, and like, oh shoot, now everyone really has turned on me now. Even my somewhat mortal enemy / boyfriend character turned on me. I ship the Kylux very hard.
Kylux is the best.
Yep. Red, it looked like you were about to say something. Would you like to jump in?
In terms of redeeming Ben, I can definitely see that, but I think at the same time, I just love the symbolism at the end of Last Jedi so much of just, no, that is the door literally closing on his face.
Yeah.
And I kind of like, if we are gonna have an end to his arc, at least in terms of, like, to an extent almost, that is the end of his internal conflict arc, and from here, that door is closed, at least for this trilogy, and for 9, it's mostly...
he just becomes Hitler.
Well, I feel like the door...
Go ahead, Matt.
Oh, I feel like the door is closed for Rey, at least in this point in time, because I think the key thing here, and I'm going to bring up this comparison again until someone stops me. The thing is that you're looking at a guy who at this point has to realize that he wants to come back because it's what he wants. Mm-hmm. So like Rey tried to bring him back. Han tried to bring him back. No one could, Leia, essentially kind of tried to bring him back a little bit, and like no one could pull him back because until he himself knows internally that that's what he wants, then he's not going to come back. And that's why the Zuko comparison is a lot more apt, I feel like, than some people even realize, because that's exactly what happens to him. That like Katara tries to bring him back, Aang tries to bring him back, and he never does it. He has like every single opportunity, and like in Last Jedi, he has the most amazing opportunity to come back when they finish off the Praetorian Guards, and then he doesn't. So at this point, when he realizes how absolutely miserable and insane and cut off from the world he feels, that's when he's going to realize how wrong he was. So he's going to, if he comes back, he's going to have to come back in a way where everyone, even Rey, is kind of hates him. And, you know, to see a character come back to the light side in Star Wars who has to actually deal with the consequences of his actions and actually deal with what he's done and do anything he can to try to begin to make things better, I think that would be really cool and interesting to see, because we've never seen that. Like Darth Vader comes back from the light and he murdered children with his bare hands, and he tortured his own daughter, and like we never talk about, like Bloodline talks about it, which is awesome, but like you know how Luke was really ready to forgive Darth Vader, but like Leia wasn't. And so like to see someone come back and not just be like, oh, he heroically sacrificed himself and so we remember him fondly. Like, no, let's bring Ben back, but let's make it just the hardest thing in the world. That's what I really want to see. Like, I want him to come back, but I don't want it to be easy. At least that's what I'd like to see.
I agree with you, and it always reminds me of one of my favorite Star Wars Infinities novels. It's The Return of the Jedi Infinity, that ends with Vader alive, and he's like in this white armor. It's like the Darth Vader armor, just white, and because he he did the redeem thing, and it ends like right at the end. But I want to see that universe continue. Just like, what does Darth Vader have to go with now? Now, even though he's on the good side in that Infinities comic, but the fact that he pretty much was like, I guess, space Himmler, because I always his Hitler's Palpatine, for like decades, and now it's like, oh, now I'm on the light side. Like, what do you have to deal with every day? It's like, I would have loved to see that, and I think if we did that, which I do think is an interesting idea, that kind of, though, makes me kind of almost want an episode 10, 11, 12, just so we can see that kind of play out as well. Like, I mentioned this earlier, like, if Ben does, turn, like, I do want him to have some sort of penance, like, does he need to go to jail? Like, I don't think they'll publicly execute him, just in a franchise sense, because, Adam Driver, Kylo Ren is your big money maker. But it's like, is he going to be in jail? Will he kind of just go off and kind of like be literally solo, his own person, just roaming around the galaxy just on his own?
I saw someone float out the idea that he would self-sacrifice, but in not like he wouldn't die, but he would have to perform some self-sacrificial thing that cuts off his connection to the Force somehow. And so he comes back, but he no longer has the Force. And I think that could be cool, especially if we use the Knights of Ren to do some kind of Force-based super weapon. Because the other thing I will also talk about ad nauseum is KOTOR 2. And so ever since I played that game and saw the mass shadow generator, the idea of a Force-based super weapon or something that drains the Force as it's used is just the coolest thing ever. So I think some sort of redemption where Ben has to sacrifice something that is so inherent to who he is, be it his ability to use the Force or his luscious hair. Like he's got to lose something, but still come back. I think that would, and I had not seen that floating around until like today on Twitter, and I was just like, oh, that's cool.
Definitely.
And Malachor is canon, so you never know.
I know. I need to know what happened on Malachor, like in detail right now.
There is a Force-based super weapon. There's, I think, it does require a Sith holocron.
Seemingly.
It does require a Sith holocron to work. But yeah, another darker idea.
Well, to that point though, I don't necessarily want him redeemed, but man, that theory has me, because that's exactly what happened to Eula Queldroma, and I love that character, and he's kind of Anakin done right before Clone Wars existed. But I guess before the prequels even existed.
and before Quinlan Voss.
But yeah, so if they go the Ulick route, I would definitely like that, if anything else.
I've always had this dark idea, and I know some people won't like this because it does involve Ben dying, but it's like near the end, and Ben kind of realized, oh my god, what have I done to my life in the world? And he almost basically he performs Saboku. I'm butchering the name, Saboku, Japanese suicide, with the samurai sword, but with his own lightsaber. So yeah, that. I know they probably won't do that because it's really dark, but it's like, I don't know. I've always had that image in my head of like that would be his like downfall or just his end. That's just always something I've always floated around too.
Also, if we go the route of people like losing their Force abilities, and you guys might hate me for this, but I really hope we get at least a mention of midichlorians. Like, really, honestly.
I think that, I mean, it's possible because the sequel trilogy has done a pretty good job of acknowledging the prequels.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I think the super weapon is super possible just because everything we know about the First Order is that they're ridiculously advanced in technology. Like, everything they pull out, the Resistance is just like, that shouldn't be possible. But Hux, that's what he studies. He knows engineering, and so he really believes in like innovation. And if you read all the like articles about him in everything that's ever been published, it pretty much just talks about how much he hates the Force. So I don't think it would be entirely out of character for him to like start doing this side project that is like a weapon to use against Force users, because he hates Kylo for the ability to just kind of like throw him into a wall whenever he feels like it. So I think it's very possible, especially since it's looking like we're going to have a time jump probably, that Hux
I hope so.
is building like this sort of thing and is going to pull that out in Episode 9 and kind of render Kylo Ren defenseless and take over the First Order.
That does.
Especially if we have. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you go. You go first.
Especially if we have what I've heard some people saying, which would be like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if the Knights of Ren were like in some way going around and trying to hunt down other Force-sensitive people and like snuff them out? And I'm just like, ooh.
Basically, they're trying to kill Broom Boy before Broom Boy becomes.
Yeah, Broom Boy.
Yeah.
And I think that's cool because that gives Kylo and Rey something to both be upset about. Because like Kylo, even the most horrendous dark side user is just like, well, if you just keep killing off all Force users, then like that's not good for just the balance of the Force. So I think if Hux is doing that in secret, or again, we don't know the Knights of Ren really where their loyalties lie, if it's more to the First Order or to Kylo. So like I think using the Knights of Ren in that way is kind of an interesting idea, but we'll see.
In terms of the Knights of Ren, I think a route that would be cool to go is that while Kylo is the leader of the Knights of Ren, I think it might be the case that the Knights of Ren were more loyal to Snoke than anyone else, in a way. And if Snoke is dead now, then that might cause them to maybe start questioning Kylo a little bit.
Yeah.
That'd be interesting. On the First Order and super weapons, and I'll let Reds answer this one or give his perception because he's always into this stuff. Like, how big do you think the First Order truly is? Like, are they the Empire sized, or are they like they're like the size of maybe like the Rebellion at its biggest, but they just have a lot of tech, so it's like they got the guns, but they may not have the numbers. And I'll let Red answer that one or predict.
I'd say at the most generous, they're probably the first wave of clones in like the first month of the Clone War in terms of size, and at the smallest, probably the Alliance by the time of maybe a little bit bigger than they were at Endor, but definitely not as big as they were at Jakku. Somewhere in between.
Yeah, because that would get to the point of, like, the First Order may not have the numbers, but they definitely have the tech, and Hux is all about that tech. He got his World Devastators probably somewhere, his Starkiller 2s, his Galaxy Guns.
He's got a whole monologue in the Last Jedi novel that's just, he's gonna go build like 13 more Starkillers immediately as soon as they take over.
Oh yeah,
What are you gonna use them on?
He doesn't care. He's just gonna have them.
That dude's like the Tarkin Doctrine incarnate. Like, you and Tarkin were like, dude, too many weapons. I think you're kind of gun obsessed here.
I love the idea of Hux as like a mad scientist.
Well, his dad was torturing children.
His dad was the worst. Can't even talk about Brendel Hux.
Yeah, Brendel Hux is one of the most despicable men in all of canon.
I hope.
But he has a very beautiful mustache.
I thought he had a beard. I hope
Or
he
I
appears
think
in
of
the movie.
Pelion. I don't know.
Now you're thinking of Pelion. Brendel Hux got a beard. The beard.
He doesn't deserve the Imperial mustache.
Exactly. Or to be thrown second. But yeah, I definitely, I'm always kind of thinking there's going to be a super weapon just because it's Abrams. I hope Kylo though, and this is something maybe I'm hoping too much of tie-ins for the books and such, but I really want them to delve, and Kylo to delve into this whole unknown regions, kind of what's out there, the source of the Force, that rhymed, thing that's always kind of hinted at a little bit, like this dark side nexus that Palpatine was looking for when he was sending people to the unknown regions, and maybe Kylo finds that, and that's where you get your Force weapon from. That's kind of like my big hope. Red, how about you take us somewhere again?
I guess tangentially connected. How big do you guys think the Resistance will be, or I guess, how do you think they will be functioning with the First Order in a military sense?
Well, we know that Lando's coming back, and one of the theories I've heard is that he might help like fund the Resistance, or even have like a leading role within it, which would be cool. But I don't know how necessarily big the Resistance is going to be by itself, but I think a lot of it depends on the time jump. If we only jump like 3 years, it'll probably be pretty big. If we jump like 5 or 7 years, it'll probably be like really big. But we don't know how long it'll be. But I think it'll definitely be big enough to probably take on the First Order.
I want to see Lando show up and have these underworld connections where the Resistance goes up to people and is just like, hey, do you like being able to actually do your underworld stuff? Well, that's not going to happen if the First Order stays in power. And it kind of puts everyone in this vague moral gray area where they are partnering with what are quintessentially criminals via these underground connections that someone like Lando would have, and they're using that to bolster their numbers. And I think that would be cool. Mm-hmm. Have like a whole resistance of freaking like bounty hunters and stuff. Like hell yeah.
Pirates Guild canon.
Yeah, get like a bunch of pirates and bounty hunters together who are, I don't know. I just think that'd be cool.
Crimson Corsair could be involved.
Yeah, Maz too. Maz Kanata, obviously.
Or Captain Athano.
That's the same person.
Oh.
Maybe even Conjure Club will decide to join in at the end. Like maybe like the First Order's like, get ready, Resistance. You are about to fall to the might of the First Order, and then all you just hear is, tell that to Conjure Club. And then Conjure Club's fleet shows up and they just kick ass. It will be great.
To touch on something involving Kylo for a second, one of the big theories that we've heard since the announcement of Episode 7 is the possibility of Anakin's Force Ghost appearing to Ben, and possibly them getting Hayden Christensen to play him again. I would love that. I think that would be fantastic, and I think it will be really cool, because in Episode 8, I think Kylo pretty much gives up on the idea of becoming Vader and decides, I'm just going to be me, let the past die, kill it if you have to, that whole thing. It would be cool if we kind of got a confrontation between him and Anakin's Force Ghost, and possibly Luke's as well. I think Luke coming back as Force Ghost is a definite possibility, because, at the end of Last Jedi, he says, if you strike me down in anger, I will always be with you. So I think we're definitely going to see Luke in some regard in that movie.
Did you see like a Luke Skywalker Cade type relationship with like Force Ghost Luke and Kylo, and Kylo's just like, get out of my head, I'm gonna start doing some death sticks, get away from me. Because as kind of stupid as that is, I actually think that's actually a super interesting idea that, because in real world, like people turn to like drugs and alcohol to run away from their problems. So the idea of a character who turns to something to just get this like literal voice of conscience out of their head, I think is kind of neat.
So I've always had...
Also, sorry, can I just say a moment that I know is not going to happen, but I really want to see? I really want to see Kylo go to Mustafar and visit Vader's castle.
Yeah.
I could see that happening. I actually could.
Yeah.
Something I want to see, two things, and kind of harken to that Azula comparison. One can't really happen though. Is I kind of want to see Princess Leia's ghost if Leia does pass in the 2 years, which always heartbreaking. Cause, oh, sorry. But can Carrie pass? It's like won't get to, because they always said Episode 9 was going to be her movie. It's like can't see that and I'm sure they can try something, but it's like hurts. And another thing I've always wanted to see is, and I know this can't happen, but maybe they'll make it happen. Han Solo just appeared as the Force ghost, like Kylo then is like first Supreme Leader throne room, and then just the ghost of Han Solo shows up, and he's like lounging on the big throne room, just kind of looking at this place like, geez, kid, what's up with this place? Like he's just kind of messing with him a bit.
Han appears to Kylo, and he's just like, hey, kid, you fucked up, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
I mean, he probably wouldn't say fuck, because it'll be PG-13, but...
Yeah. Carly, did you want to add to that?
I mean, I think that Anakin showing up would be good. I'd really like that, because we haven't seen Hayden Christensen reprise the role really ever.
And possibly Obi-Wan, too. You never know.
Yeah. I think that would be interesting, especially because, like, I don't know, throughout Last Jedi, he, like, says, let the past die, and he helps Rey get over her past, but I think he really struggles to get over his past. And so I think that maybe, like, since he's killed off Snoke, maybe we could learn that, like, Snoke was keeping his mind kind of closed, and now Force Ghosts, like, can actually talk to him and stuff. Like, experiences that he's never had before, because he's never spoken to Anakin. He's only heard about him, like, from what Snoke has said. And so, like, because Snoke is gone, Anakin can now appear to him and just be like, look, I get that you were trying to follow in my footsteps, but everything I did was wrong. And, like, I ended up hating my life. And I'm only happy, like, toward the end. And now, like, I don't want you to screw up as badly as I did.
That actually could also, if Force Ghosts become a big thing, like, work with your idea, Matt, like a Force weapon. Because, like, who should defeat the Force weapon but the Force Ghost, the ultimate pillar of Force sensitivity there. Oh, sorry.
I feel like if you're gonna, oh, sorry.
Oh no, go ahead.
I feel like if you're gonna have one Force Ghost show up to Kylo, like, with Carly's idea of now that Snoke is gone, he doesn't have this, like, because we know Snoke is kind of in Kylo and Hux's heads a lot, and so the idea that now that Snoke is gone, there's not as much preventing these Force Ghosts from appearing to him. I think that's a super neat idea, and I feel like if you're gonna do one, you just gotta barrage him with, like, all of them. Like, literally, he's got all these voices in his head just tearing him apart all the time. I love that idea. And then Obi-Wan Kenobi can show up and look at the camera and be like, I'm not Rey's grandfather, and then that'll be great. I would love that, so everyone can shut up. Sorry, rant.
I was just gonna say to your point real quickly. You mentioned the thing about Snoke like being in Kylo's head. That was pretty much going on since literally his birth. Like, I don't know if you read the Aftermath novels, but in those, they pretty much confirmed that Snoke was reaching out to Ben while he was literally in the womb.
Mm-hmm. No, he's always been there. And so, like, the idea that Ben was supposed to somehow be able to overcome this is kind of ridiculous in the first place, which is why I really want him to be redeemed. Because it's just, I don't know, it's a really depressing story for Star Wars to tell us that this child who literally never had a chance still doesn't get to be even kind of happy in the end.
Snoke is one creepy dude. But yeah, Red, you know a lot about the inside Star Wars lore and such. Are there, like, rules for Force Ghosts to appear to certain people, or they can appear to anybody? Like, if they wanted to. Like, you and you.
I mean, I don't know. I would assume I always wondered how, like, if Han sort of glimpsed Obi-Wan and just thought it was the snow when he shows up right as he fades away in Empire. But yeah, I have no real idea as to... Well, wait, if they can see Force Ghosts, they would probably be able to see Yoda, Obi-Wan, and Anakin at the end of Return of the Jedi, so I'm gonna go with no, because the entire group of rebels wasn't like, what the hell are they doing here? Why is there a green guy sitting on a post that's glowing blue?
Partying we are here for.
I don't know, it's funny because, like, in hindsight, it's an incredibly obvious story choice, but I was, like, not expecting Yoda to show up in Last Jedi, so, like, now I'm just kind of like, yeah, I could see... And I think Hayden Christensen, frankly, deserves the chance to come back, honestly.
Yeah.
I feel like he does. That's why, everyone in the universe pulls so hard for Ewan McGregor, because, I mean, no one is that great an actor under George Lucas. And, I mean, that's, again, I don't want to be the Star Wars fan that does nothing but hate on George Lucas, but that's just kind of true. Harrison Ford has talked about that at length, that, George is not great with acting. So I feel like bringing a Force Ghost back and having it be Hayden Christensen, while I do kind of like, in Jedi when the third Force Ghost appears and it's just some old dude and you're just like, wait, who is that? And then you're like, oh wait, that's Anakin. Like, I think that's kind of cool, and I didn't love replacing him with Hayden Christensen back then. I'm more okay with it now, so I'd really like to see him again in the role.
Definitely. I know one character that a lot of people would want to see come back, even as a Force Ghost, even though I don't know if this will probably not even work. I know a lot of people want to see Padme come back as a Force Ghost. I know that's out there, and I know it's strong, and if they did that, I wouldn't be opposed to it, to be quite honest. So I'm just...
you could have Kylo or Rey, like, visit her grave on Naboo or something.
Yeah.
I think that'd be cool.
I want to see Naboo come back. Wouldn't that be cool if that's where the final battle takes place, on Naboo? That's where it all started.
It's where Anakin and Padme fell in love. It's where Kylo and Rey will fall in love. What? Who said that?
No.
What was that?
And now the comment section just gets flooded.
There it goes. I did it. I ruined it. I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay.
The tagline, if Naboo appears in episode 9, the tagline should be, "We's a going home."
Oh, that would...
the Gungan Grand Army can show up?
Yes.
I mean, I honestly legitimately think there's a strong chance that those two will at some point end up, like, romantically together. Like, honestly, I don't think it's a stretch at all, but
I don't want that. Really,
I get that it's contentious, but you can't look at Last Jedi and be like, nah, there's nothing there. Like, there's clearly something there, and I think that there's...
I think it ended with that final scene of her closing the door on him, honestly. Like, I just think... I don't mean anything against, like, Reylo shippers, and I'm sure a lot of them are nice people. I just don't think that relationship would work at all, personally.
Also, poor Hux.
Oh, yeah, poor Hux. I will say this. I do think Reylo is a thing in the sense that there is a connection between them, because, they have said, the Star Wars Online has said there is some sort of Force connection between them. I don't think it's romantic. It's more like the Force needs these two to do something.
Well, specifically, Snoke needed them to be connected.
But even afterwards, it's like they were still Force Skyping each other. Whether that's just Kylo Force Skyping her, or Rey just tapped into it for some reason.
I think it's probably just lingering, because Ben does say that the effort alone would kill her.
Right.
Though they are only like 30 feet, like a mile away from each other at that point. I think it's probably just residual, and since they are so close at that point, I don't think the connection is still there. We might see it get like, they might try and bring it back. Like, that might be a whole thing for Rey's character, like having to go through that again, even though she does not want to be inside his head again. Maybe in order to defeat him, that's part of the plan, and that could be an interesting idea.
Well, we don't know if he can do it. He can do the Force Skyping. I don't know. Like, they both seem to pick up on things, and Kylo does have the training. Oops, sorry. I brought that part up. That darn training. But yeah, I can see that. I can definitely see that. Like that's always been my kind of take on it. Let's see. Who wants to bring up something else? I'm running out of things to think of. Oh,
I guess the thing that's how much do you guys think though Abrams would be willing to go the redemption route? Because if Ryan was doing 9, I think it would be a little bit more likely. But Abrams has been a lot firmer on he's a neo-Nazi.
Yeah, and he's Jewish.
well, yeah.
J.J. Abrams.
Yeah, you get your pronouns.
I'm about to say
that comes up weird.
Kylo Jewish? Okay.
No, I said J.J. Abrams.
I know. I'm just joking because your sentence structure.
Sorry.
It's definitely something I think about. I also have to think about as well, just the powers that be above Abrams, Kennedy, the story group, the people, and I know they give these directors free reign. Don't make me wrong, but I'm sure these are more tactically planned out than even we give them credit for. I mean, yeah, Ryan got to do what he wanted most 99% of the time, but that's because he and his vision was very well in line with what they wanted or what they were hoping to get. So there's that. Anybody else want to add in?
I mean, I think JJ hated these characters, and he's basically had the idea of where like their character arcs were going to go since they were made. So I don't really think that Rian Johnson did anything out of left field that JJ just kind of went with. Like, from what I understand, they basically planned out the whole like trilogy, but you have a lot more freedom about like specifics. But I feel like as far as characters, their character arcs are there, and I don't think JJ really looks at any of the characters singularly and is just like, no, this is a good guy and this is a bad guy. Because based on interviews and stuff, like he's talked about the creation of Hux, he put a lot of effort into, and he considers him a tragic character. And if you're going to call anyone a neo-Nazi, it would be Hux. But like he doesn't take a like solid stance on that because they're fictional characters and they're much more complicated than that. And I think he's shown an interest in complicated characters. So I don't think he's going to like oversimplify anything.
Oh,
Didn't he compare Kylo to a member of ISIS, though? Oh, wait, no, sorry, that was Adam Driver who did that.
Yeah.
I'm sure Adam Driver does have some influence on how his character goes. And that goes back to something we talked about earlier, just sort of like the whole finality and franchise, sort of like, we're getting sequels eventually. There will be a 10, 11, 12, you mark my words. It's only a matter of time and what they want to do. And how much, again, finality they want to put into this arc.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that I do agree that, I mean, I don't know. I feel like knowing that Snoke was reaching out to Kylo in basically almost practically in Leia's womb, like it just, the idea that this is a character who will not get redeemed and he will just become, he will die evil, like I feel like that is depressing almost to the point of being kind of un-Star Warsy. Like, I don't know, I really would.
Star Wars has gone pretty depressing before.
It has,
i.e. the Umbar arc from Clone Wars.
Yeah, and I'm not saying it hasn't, but man, that is not the way this is not. I mean, again, part of it is just taste, obviously. That's just not where I want to see this trilogy end. Especially as someone who identifies with Kylo a lot. There's a lot about the way Kylo's parents treated him and the things that brought him over to the dark that at least resonate with me personally, and I would hate to see I don't know. Again, because it's art, and art is going to hit people in different ways, and people are.
I have some of those connections too, personally, but I still acknowledge when a character is evil and they deserve to be punished for what they've done.
And I'm not saying he doesn't, but Darth Vader murdered children like with his bare hands, and he still gets a form of redemption. So I'm not like, that's the problem. Is I feel like whenever I talk about redemption, people are just like, oh, but what about all this bad stuff he did? I'm like, yeah. He did do a lot of bad stuff, and he should be alive to pay for it. Like, that's what I want to see.
Anakin killed men, women, and children, and he still got redeemed.
Yeah, he killed...
Should he have?
I think
Oh, that's a whole debate within itself.
I mean,
but-
I'll try to touch it just a little bit. I won't I won't turn this into an Anakin Vader redemption debate, but I will say, I definitely think Luke forgave Vader at the end, and I guess because he became a Force ghost. I guess if you kind of want to make the Jesus God forgives you parallels, the Force did forgive him too. But if Vader had lived and kind of like I'm coming willingly with you, son. I'm sure just like Vader probably would have accepted the fact, yeah, I need jail time. I need to do community service. I need to use my force.
He just becomes a janitor.
Yeah, I need to use my force.
He's using his lightsaber to pick up trash in like the center of a highway.
Pretty much, it's like I need therapy and counseling and that sort of thing. And like, I'm going to turn myself into a tool for the Jedi in the Republic because that's probably like the best I can do for myself. I mean, obviously, maybe Kylo won't be that. Well, I could if Kylo gets quote unquote redeemed, and I think that's just maybe the problem of using the term redeemed. But maybe if Kylo atones for his sins, or just realizes I am, oh my god, or just has a come to Jesus moment and like, oh my god, I am a douche.
It's again the
Star Wars Episode 9. I am a douche.
It's again, and I'm gonna bring it up again because why not? It's that moment on the beach where they're like, "Who are you angry at, Zuko?" And he's like, "I'm angry at myself." And it's like, I'm not saying he needs to be redeemed and then everyone's all sunshine and rainbows.
Oh no, I agree.
I'm just saying I don't want to see him die a villain. I just really don't.
Yeah,
I don't think they'll go straight up that. Sorry.
I don't think he's like impossible to be redeemed at this point because like having read the Last Jedi novelization, Rey after the throne room scene absolutely has the opportunity to kill him, and she chooses not to because she believes that the Force is not done with him yet, which makes me really believe that he's going to be redeemed because like there's a scene that is not in the movie where she wakes up and they're like both passed out in the throne room, and she wakes up first obviously because she gets away. And she considers taking his lightsaber to defend herself. She considers taking his lightsaber to kill him and then leaving. And she just kind of looks at him and decides she can't do that because the Force has bigger plans for him, and she chooses to leave him there.
Right, and that's where I kind of always the Force has bigger plans. Where like that's where I kind of draw my line at Reylo. Like that's how I always interpret it myself. And also back to the beach thing. Now I just imagine like if Star Wars Resistance, that new TV show, does a time jump. I just want a Hux and Kylo beach episode now. just do that episode, but with Hux and Kylo.
Should have so much sunscreen.
It would be
Cardinal better be in that show. I swear to God, that better be Cardinal. If it's Cardinal, I'm gonna goddamn mind.
It's possible.
I need it.
Cardinal, Ray Sloan, all the.
I would like to know what happened to Ray Sloan. I don't even care if the answer is just like she died of old age. Like someone just tell me that and I'll be okay.
But yeah, and I agree with everybody saying. I always think that's kind of the ultimate problem of using terms like redemption and who like what counts as redemption, and that could be its own topic, and we could be here for hours discussing all that moral complications.
I want to add like. I love how Ben is handled in The Last Jedi, but I have a lot of friends who couldn't fully enjoy that film because on a personal and moral level, they were disturbed by some of the sympathizing with Kylo, and it kind of connects to something one of the writers for 1138 had said on Twitter, that it's almost like the people who want Kylo to be redeemed see him as themselves, and those that don't see him as the people in their lives who have hurt them. Though to an extent, I actually do kind of relate to Kylo on some levels with my own psychology and anxiety and anger and shit. And it's almost like therein lies kind of my problem with that, where it's like, I've had shitty stuff happen to me in my life. I have my own anger problems and I'm on meds and shit like that. But I didn't blow up an entire solar system.
Well, Kylo did do that. That was hard.
Yeah, I guess.
Kylo didn't give that badass speech at the beginning.
He is wearing the mask. Maybe under there, he's like, wait, who fired? Shit!
I mean, like, I don't know. From everything we've seen about Kylo, we haven't actually seen him do that much. Like, he orders the death of the village on Jakku, but if you read, like, the Poe Dameron comic, you discover that that's just, like, that's the First Order's policy. If they show up somewhere, they're gonna kill all witnesses. So that's not, like, Kylo going out of his way to be evil. That's just him, like, doing exactly what anyone in the organization would have done. Especially considering they weren't an innocent village, they did take up arms and fight back.
Well, they took up arms against Nazis.
Well, I mean, that's not really comparable. I mean, I don't know. Based on, like, Hux's speech and stuff, they seem a lot more communist than they do fascist to me personally from what I've seen. But regardless, I also don't think it's fair to compare them to, like, normal real-life crime. Like, if Kylo shows up and murders someone, that's not the same as, like, me walking in somewhere and murdering someone, because we've seen in Star Wars that Jedi walk into bars and just, like, cut people's arms off and stuff. So, like, crimes don't have the same level of meaning in Star Wars. Like, hurting people is not as bad as it is in real life.
Yeah, but ordering the execution of people is still, I don't know, that comes off still as being
Pretty evil.
I mean, that is kind of the first thing we see Vader do in the original trilogy. He is an authority figure with the legal right to detain the well, yeah, he has provocation to detain the Tantive 4.
He had his permit.
And yet the first act we see Vader do is him choke out Antilles.
He had his permit. Yeah. He can legally do this. He got full immunity. Do you think maybe an issue with Kylo is that even though we've had 2 movies with him, we still kind of don't know him fully. I mean, I guess we have a bit of his backstory in, like, Last Shot, and we kind of understand, like, what are, like, his motivations? Like, does he want to be Supreme Leader for the power? Does he?
I don't think he knows.
Yeah, and maybe that's the point. Like, I don't know what to do. I'm Supreme Leader now. Okay.
Maybe his arc in Episode 9 is just him realizing that without Snoke, he's mostly just kind of a blank slate because now he has no one telling him what to do.
Yeah.
I think he just wants to feel for once that he's in control of his own life. Because Kylo is a character who, to me, he doesn't go with Rey, and he takes up the mantle of Supreme Leader, to me at least, not because it's what he really truly wants, but because he thinks it's going to be the thing that finally gives him that sense of control and that sense of finally coming into his own. And I think, again, he's going to realize how wrong he was, and that in making the choice of going after what he thought was going to make him happy, he's, cut himself off from the people who were trying to save him. And now he realizes that he does want to be atoned, we'll say, but there's no one left to extend an olive branch, so he's got to work harder to basically come to that conclusion on his own. I feel like that's the logical place to take that. And again, I'm not saying he shouldn't pay for all that stuff in some thematic or narrative or interesting way. I'm not saying he shouldn't, but ultimately that's kind of what I want to see.
Don't worry, you're not judged here. Just worry about the comment section. That's
what could be interesting is what could be interesting is almost giving him a reverse Anakin, where, like, his turning to the light, at least in a way, moment is burning on Mustafar or something equivalent.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, because one of the things that immediately gripped me about Kylo Ren, I remember pretty vividly, there were 2, when I first went to see Force Awakens, the 2 things that made me realize, oh my god, I love this character. The first one was when he's praying and he says, I feel it again, the pull to the light. And I'm just like, that's so interesting, right? Because how much expanded lore and novels and even just in the movies have we heard where it's like, the dark side is the seductive path, it's the easy path, it's the path of least resistance, essentially. And yet for Kylo, that's almost the opposite. Like, he would be so easy for him to slip back into the light, and he just refuses to because he feels like that's not what he's supposed to do, and that's so god dang fascinating. And then the second part was when he looks all insane in the woods and it's like, we're not done yet. That was the other part where I was just like, oh, I love this guy.
I like that idea, Red, you had about the reverse Anakin, because like one of the really earliest concepts of art is that kind of Neo Vader almost mechanical look. Which, whether or not that was actually Kylo in mechanical armor or just, the Jedi killer before he became Ben Solo, who knows? But I've always did have this idea of like maybe the end of Episode 9 is Kylo Ren gets to be like Vader, and that he's got to be all mangled and mechanical. But wouldn't it be interesting if like he turns to the light, he becomes mangled and mechanical, and I'm not gonna say he's a good guy because that's a little too bit of a stretch. But he's now on the light side, but he's now mangled and mechanical. So that would be almost a reverse Revenge of the Sith in a lot of ways too.
He literally loses parts of himself to the dark side.
Ooh, yeah.
And what remains is the light. Let's see here. We're coming out about an hour 5. I'm starting to run out of things to say. Anybody else want to bring up something that's been on your mind as we talked?
Phasma?
Oh yeah, I guess Phasma. Do you think Phasma's still alive?
I think she's dead. I think she better be dead this time, because come on. We already went through this once.
They killed Phasma.
You bastards.
I guess because we talked a little bit about the whole, if the First Order lives, do you want Hux to live and like he finally, like, do you want to have like a moment where Hux like I am Supreme Leader Hux now, like he has his moment to shine before it all just comes crashing down on him, or if he lives?
So he's Starscream in the Transformers movie?
Kind of, yes.
Exactly.
Cool.
Kylo comes back. Hux is like, Kylo, is that you? And Kylo's like, here's a hint. He just cuts his head off.
Yeah, I mean, I want Hux to survive in kind of the same way that I want Kylo to, just because at the end of, like, we didn't really get to see many Imperials pay for anything. We definitely didn't get to see someone like Tarkin pay for anything. He just died. So I think it would be more interesting to keep Hux alive and, like, see if there is any way to, like, redeem people from the First Order, because we know, like, for a fact that happens with Finn. And we might get to see it with stormtroopers. So I'm just like, I don't know, seeing Hux go to jail and like pay for his crimes, or seeing like if there's some way the First Order can assimilate into normal life. I think there are a lot more interesting things to do than just kill that character off. I don't know if they will bother, because it might just be easier to kill him off. But I think there are a ton of other paths you could explore.
I do.
You touched on.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
You touched on something I really want to see, which is let's take the save what we love, not destroy what we hate line to me, one of the logical conclusions, which is Finn saying, if I can be turned, if I can see what life is like outside of this like brainwashing bubble, why can't other stormtroopers? And like, I think that's a way we could fight the First Order, because again, save what we love, not destroy what we hate. I mean, that's literally what all of Star Wars has been. Mm-hmm. It's just people freaked out about it because a character said it and they thought it was stupid for whatever reason.
I would love to see a stormtrooper uprising led by Finn.
Exactly. And I would love to see that. I would love to see that. I one time had an idea that I thought of, like Hux and the Knights of Ren turning on Kylo, and Kylo does get overthrown and he like barely manages to get out of alive in like the beginning of the movie, and we spend a good chunk of the movie with Kylo like completely stripped of all of the things that he had attached himself to identify.
Kylo alone.
Yeah, Kylo alone. Yeah, like Zuko alone. Fuck. Like Kylo alone, traveling through the galaxy, going to places like Nar Shaddaa, understanding what true desperation is, and maybe even understanding what groups like the First Order and the Empire do to people. Like, oh man, I would love that, because that gives you right there a story arc where Kylo at least starts to see the implications of his actions, and maybe he comes back, in a clutch moment for some big final battle or something like that. But he's on the other side. Like, I would love to actually kind of see that play out. I think that would be a really cool way to take it. I'm gonna take that, and I'm gonna say that that's my pipe dream for what happens in episode 9.
I mean, I feel like if you were to do stuff like that, like Kylo alone and the Zuko thing, I feel like it could be interesting, like where they would start to seed it in the movie. Like, I feel like you'd have to do it like really early on, and it's sort of like that balance. That kind of like counters my balance of like I want to see Kylo just as supreme leader, but I also kind of want. But if you do go that route, you gotta do it early and not just like last minute Darth Vader throws the Emperor over the railing.
Exactly.
You gotta.
I agree with that.
You gotta build it up like. You can have
Kylo throws every single Knight of Ren over the railing,
and then Hux, and then the officer, and then PV.
And then the dreadnoughts.
But then, yeah, like like maybe you can have maybe you can do like Kylo kind of like I'm gonna go off and do my whole force thinking thing. Hux, you do the battle stuff, and like they kind of like go back and forth between Kylo alone, and then you just cut to Hux, who's like, okay, I'm in charge now, so I'm going to do my evil mastermind plan. But yeah, we got to do it early in the movie. So yeah, sorry.
One more thing I wanted to say was that I think whatever fate Kylo has in Episode 9 is going to come back to his connection with his family, because one line that I keep thinking about in relation to that is Lor San Tekka's line at the beginning of Force Awakens when he's like, you can never escape the truth that is your family, and Kylo's like, you're so right, and then he kills him. I think that has huge implications for where Kylo's character is going to end up going. Because I have a very strong feeling we're going to see Luke again in like Force Ghost form Episode 9. We might see Anakin again. We might see Yoda or possibly Obi-Wan again. So I think whatever fate Kylo has, it's definitely going to be in relation to his family and how he feels about them.
That would be a good line to use if you wanted to do a redemption story. Like, repeat that line, but now it's like, instead of like, you're so right, Darth Vader, you're so right, Han, Luke, Leia, Anakin, Padme, all the heroes that family has built up. I guess my only concern then, because we are talking a lot about Kylo, and I'm sorry if I add just a few more hours to this podcast, I'll try to make this quick. I don't want them to take away the agency from Rey, because that's definitely my concern. Like Rey still has to have her part in the story. I mean, Kylo is the Skywalker, but in a lot of ways, I think Rey is the star. And
I think Rey's arc is going to be primarily trying to become the idealized Jedi that Luke represented at the end of Last Jedi. Like, she's going to try to become that new legend after Luke.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I, live and breathe for when we get the novels of, Grandmaster Rey and, I essentially want to see the new Jedi Order, but honestly, I kind of want to see it with Rey at the head. I know people, including myself, love the new Jedi Order stuff with Luke and the Solo twins and Kyle Katarn, and I like all that stuff too. But where they took Luke was actually just such a fascinating direction that I would love to see Rey finally succeed where Luke failed and become that Grandmaster. Because I love Rey, and we haven't talked about her much, but because this is mostly about Kylo in the First Order. But Rey is.
We could do a follow-up discussion.
I love Rey. Rey's great. She's the best.
Yeah, Rey takes on the Vong, episodes 10 through 12.
Yes!
Oh, exactly, she has the epic battle at the end. But yeah,
she falls in love with a computer virus.
Oh boy, her love.
You mean a ghost that possesses a computer?
Yeah, exactly.
And then possesses one of his dead students.
The love life of Rey is gonna be fun.
I cannot finish the Callista trilogy. God, that book series was terrible.
But yeah, unless anybody has any last minute things they want to add, I guess we'll start wrapping this up. Anybody else last minute things? I'm assuming the silence means no. But yes, that was our discussion on the First Order and Kylo Ren and the beginning of what will be many, 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 many Episode 9 speculation videos, discussions, trailer thoughts to come. Thank you all for joining. Be nice in the comments, because I know the stuff we talk about gets contentious.
We don't get comments.
Yeah, we don't, but my subscriber count's getting bigger, so maybe one day we will. And speaking of subscribe, please like and subscribe, and does anybody have any channels or things they want to promote here?
I exist.
Yes, Dr. Holocron. Go to Dr. Holocron's channel. Matt, Carly, do you want to promote something? Plug.
I say things on Twitter. Twitter where I say controversial things.
Okay. Carly, what about you? Do you want to?
No, I think I'm good right now.
Okay, no plugs. Well, that was our discussion, and thanks for joining, everybody. I will see you all later.